Hello and welcome to the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show, where this week we are super honored and really excited to have Basha head football coach Chris McDonald on the show. Coach McDonald has a tremendous resume and is also just a heck of a guy. And in doing my homework, one of the reasons I wanted to have Coach on the show, I thought it was really interesting. He's been at multiple programs, had great success at Basha, just finished his 7th year at Basha High School, the first 3 of which they went to the 6A state playoffs. The last 4, they have been in the open state playoffs. And if you're not familiar with how Arizona does it, Arizona has an open state tournament where the top teams, regardless of conference, compete for the true state championship there. The last 4 years, Basha has been in the open, been nationally ranked on a few of those seasons, won the 2022 open state championship, and this year came up just short in the open state finals against Liberty. Coaches, like I said, I knew Coach, known him a long time. The other thing I think is really interesting about his experience is, and this is something I think all the coaches can get something out of. He had great success also at Maricopa High, 22-18 at Maricopa in his 4 years there, which I really find interesting because vastly different programs. Maricopa is a place it's very difficult to win, and Coach had solid playoff contending teams there every season, which I think really speaks to his ability. We've talked about the last couple of weeks it being the right fit in certain programs, and Coach is one of those chameleons that has been able to make it work at different types of programs. So we're really excited to have him on and talk some ball with him. And I'm going to turn it over to Coach real quick, and if he wants to give us a few words, then we'll get into a couple other things before we get started here. Thank you for joining us so much, Coach. I really appreciate it.
No, I'm honored. Thank you for having me.
All right, so before we get started, I figured it would be fun for us to give a take on the national championship game prediction. So, semifinal games I certainly enjoyed as a Sun Devil fan. I'm not going to lie, the sting is still not quite off from the Peach Bowl loss. And I know many Sun Devil fans on Twitter were certainly very amused, so to speak, at Coach Sarkisian in Texas going crazy on a few of those targeting calls that maybe weren't as egregious as the one they missed on Arizona State. But anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and really 2 excellent football teams, both run the ball extremely well, great defensive football teams. I know the point spread is pretty high for a national championship game at 9 points. I know Coach Brousseau is a big Irish fan, but I got to go with the Buckeyes on this one. I do think it's going to be closer than people think. I think Ohio State comes out on top 24-17 in this one. So, Coach McDonald, if you want to give us your thoughts on that one or any NFL playoff action, that would be we would be grateful.
I think it's a fantastic matchup. I think Freeman's got. I mean, Notre Dame's one of the top teams in the country, but you can kind of tell he's got them playing like they've got this underdog mentality, right? Both, like you said, alluded to, great defensive teams, 2 of the top defensive teams. I think the difference is, I think Ohio State is going to be able to get a couple more explosives in there than Notre Dame is from an offensive standpoint. I've got it 27-20, 24-20, something like that. Riley Leonard's got to step up his play from last week. Like, that has to happen, right, in order for Notre Dame to be able to do what they want to do. But, I'm happy for Ryan Day. He's a good man. I think he's, losing to Michigan. I mean, and they're calling for his head, and here he is. And then Marcus Freeman, for what he did losing to NIU earlier in the year, and to get those guys to come back and believe and just reel off however many games in a row they've won. Just 2 phenomenal coaches running 2 great programs.
Well, Coach Brousseau, I think I know where you're going with this pick. So why don't you give us your thoughts on this one?
Well, I thought Coach McDonald put it exquisitely. Notre Dame's just not very dynamic on offense, really outside of Jeremiah Love. Hopefully he gets rolling, and Riley Leonard didn't throw a passing touchdown until week 4 this season, if I'm not mistaken. So that's just been a concern all year long, and has continued forward. So I'm hoping, praying that the Irish pull it off. But I think Ohio State probably wins quite comfortably, not by more than 10 or so. But I just don't know if Notre Dame will be able to hang with that kind of dynamic offense that the Buckeyes have. So we'll see. It should be fun. It's been a great playoff so far, and hopefully it finishes with a banger.
I know, Coach Brusso, I really enjoyed the meme you sent me or the Twitter post from legendary Irish coach Lou Holtz, who said, if Notre Dame doesn't win, it's just because we want to save Ryan Day's job, which I found to be pretty entertaining. Coach McDonald, have you ever heard the classic story of Lou Holtz before that classic 1988 Miami Notre Dame game? Have you ever heard that one there from? I heard Chris Zorich tell it one time on a podcast where he's getting them fired up, ready to run out of the tunnel to play the Hurricanes, and the year before there'd almost been a fight or something to that effect, and he says, I only got one request, men. If it breaks down, you save Jimmy Johnson's butt for me.
I've heard that story. Yeah, that's funny.
If you're not ready to run out of the tunnel on that, I don't know what's going to get you ready to go. So, also some really exciting NFL playoff action. Just got done watching the Snow Bowl there with the Eagles and the Rams. Really exciting game. Saquon Barkley, 24 carries, 196. Really, really excited to watch this this Ravens-Bills game tonight. But we're going to get into the topic at hand, which this is our third episode where we've talked about program building. Really, really a wonderful episode last week. Got to learn a ton from the great Joe Kirsting, JUCO Hall of Famer. And now we're so excited to have Coach McDonald on. So, Coach, we're going to attack this from you've gotten the job. And in all these questions, if you could maybe give us some insight into the different programs you took over, because in both cases, you took over programs. And I think it's important not to look backwards, but Maricopa had struggled. Basha, people don't really remember. Doing my homework here, was 5-15, I believe, in the 2 years prior to you and your staff's arrival. So I want you to take us through. You've got the job. Now what?
Well, the first thing I had to do is the seniors, or they're going to be seniors. I was going to be their third coach, right? Third coach in their high school experience, and so I think the first thing I had to do is get buy-in from them, and I remember having our senior meeting, and it was like, look, I'm not going to demand that you trust me or demand respect. I'm going to earn it. Allow me to earn it from you guys. And in all honesty, it was just there were some really good pieces on that team. In all honesty, there were some good players. They just needed to be loved up, man. Like, they've been gone through the ringer, for 3 years prior to that, and they just wanted to enjoy their senior year. And they were a tight group. Like, they were, I think the adversity that they faced, made them a tight group. So they were, you could tell they were boys, right? And wanted to play for each other. And so that was the first thing. And then from there, it was just creating a culture and an experience where the community would start talking, right? Like, when you take over a program like that, and you've got Chandler, who's coming off, 3 state titles or whatever it is, nationally ranked. You got a Hamilton program down the street that's, nationally ranked in the national conversation almost every year. Perry was just coming off of 2 state runner-up appearances with the Purdy's. I mean, so I'm surrounded by sharks, and then so, what are we going to do at Basha that's going to be different than maybe some of the other programs? And I think the big thing that we wanted to do is make sure that we value every kid, and we make sure that these kids aren't just some number coming through their program, right? And we knew it was going to be a building process, but it's just year by year. I'm a very impatient guy, so I had some really good assistants, still do, that kind of keep me in check and make me look long term, right down. But I think that's the big thing, like, because kids talk, right? Kids talk, and I think that's what really kind of helped us, is that people wanted to be part of our program despite our lack of on-field performance, as you talked about the previous 3 years.
Well, I know I was looking into that, and as you said, the seniors, it was their third coach. I believe you guys had you were the fourth coach, I believe, in 5 years.
I might have been, yeah.
Buskin, Wellbrock, and I'm trying.
Gerald Todd.
There you go. Gerald Todd there as well. So How did that differ for you, Coach, than taking over Maricopa, who had traditionally been a down program that had struggled long term?
In all honesty, Coach, like it's the same approach. Like, kids have so many options these days than when we did playing ball, right? Like, and so you've got to create an experience where they want to come out and they want to compete and they want to have fun, and you can't lose sight of that, right? Like, yeah, we're competitive as heck, and I'm fiery, I get after it, but you know, I think one of my gifts is like I can pretty much relate to a lot of different people from different backgrounds and socioeconomics and race and all that stuff, and I think they know that they know that they can trust me and lean on me, and that I'm going to mentor them in the right way, and I think especially out there in Maricopa, it was a lot of fun, man. We had a lot of really good athletes that just um, were very raw. And then once you buy into them and you buy into developing them, and they actually feel that and see that, um, again, it's the same playbook. Really, it's the same playbook.
That's an interesting point you make, Coach, because I would imagine in the Chandler district, possibly you get some more polished athletes. I don't know what the youth program was out there. I know in the Chandler area, certainly really, really strong programs all over there. But that's a really, really interesting point. Anything to add, Coach Brusso?
Yeah, you mentioned the dynamic you have with your assistants and sometimes your lack of patience. How do you balance and develop trust with those guys so they can give you constructive feedback or criticism? You guys maintain obviously a healthy working dynamic, coaching structure, and all that stuff.
I think it's just being proactive right through the interview process, understanding what it is you want to surround yourself with, the people that you want to surround yourself with. A lot of my coaches on staff, a lot of my um, off uh, off campus coaches, if you will, are in leadership roles and in management roles in their private life or corporate life, and so they're not they bring some lessons to the table that I can learn from too. I never want to surround myself with yes men like ever, and I never want to be the smartest guy in the room either. So the first thing is getting guys that are leader of men, right? And then um, number two, they're going to be good for kids, right? And that's the big thing. Like the football aspect, like we're all coaches, man. Like that just comes with experience and teaching and helping and whatnot. When I'm talking from developing coaches, but really it's about their character and personality and their personality traits and making sure that they're good fits.
I really like what you said there, Coach. Kids do. They want you to earn that respect and show them that you care about them as people first and foremost, and you have their best interest. And the ones that are really good football players want you to show that you can improve them as a player. So I
Absolutely.
thought that was a really interesting point as well. I know I've talked about a little bit. I thought I knew a little bit of ball, and then I got to Red Mountain and I worked with Ron Wisniewski, who at that time had coached 20 years in college and had just come to the high school game. And I joke he was a rocket scientist because his master's was in astrophysics, but I thought I knew some ball, and then I talked to him, and I was like, "Yeah, this is a little more to this than I thought."
Picked his brain a few times. He's a math teacher at Basha.
I knew he had done the JUCO thing, and I didn't know he was over at Bashel. You'll have to make sure you tell him hello. I learned a ton
I
from
will.
him.
I will.
He's
Great
a
guy.
good
I'll go
man.
in there. He's busy now. He's got like a vineyard and stuff. He's got some stuff going on. Right. Great guy, man. But just a wealth of knowledge.
He was. I enjoyed. I made the joke last week. His son, when I don't even know how old his son is now, but when I was at Red Mountain in 2010 or 11, he had taken one of those standardized tests you take in elementary, and I was like, "Oh, how do you do?" And I looked over at it. He was in like the 99th percentile, and I was like, "I don't think you can get to 100." So I don't know. That's pretty good, I think. So anyhow, obviously you need to build a great staff. How did you go about building a staff at Basha and at Maricopa?
Well, it's tough at first. I mean, as you know, when you're starting off as a new coach and you're taking over a program that maybe hasn't had that much success, it's not like people are knocking down the door, to get in to something like that. So it's really a feel out process. But like I said, I'm a big word of mouth guy. Like I don't really ever um, when I need a coach, I rarely ever advertise it or market it or whatnot. I typically get the right guys on the bus, and then they kind of know what I'm looking for, what we need in our program, and guys that are going to fit. And so I'll take a lot of feedback from my assistants. Hey, this guy, this is a good coach, this, that, and the other. Quentin Cooley. I know he came from you guys, right? So it was like I know that he's going to, there's going to be some structure there and some things of that nature. And really that's how I assemble my staff. Looking at, I really kind of make a short list of guys, probably similar to what an AD does when he's looking for a new head coach, right? I'm not going to just, you know, advertise it and try and interview 25 different people. Like I narrow it down to about 4 or 5, really kind of have an executive committee, if you will. I got some coaches that we all bounce ideas off of each other, sit at the round table, and we all kind of run the program together and kind of take them through that interview process with about 4 or 5 other coaches, just kind of pegging them with questions. And typically the guys that we're already interviewing are pretty good people to begin with because they've been recommended, right? And really we just keep building from there. And look, we haven't been 100% on this. I mean, I think we all kind of have hired some people at times and they haven't been the best fit. And you got to deviate and pivot and move on.
Let me ask you this, Coach, because I've talked about this with some other guys as well. When we were in school, and maybe I'll remember this incorrectly, but most of my coaches were teachers, and it seems like that is something you don't see as much anymore. How was that in terms of, did you have the ability to bring people in? Obviously, that changes from district to district, but is that something you've noticed as well? Is that something that you think about when you're hiring guys? Whether obviously you're going to have people from all different, you said you have people in the corporate world in different areas, which I think is awesome because they all bring different strengths and different leadership abilities. But how was that in terms of, were you able to bring people on campus, and was that something you looked for in assembling your
Yeah,
staff?
yeah. I kind of had, like I said, when I took over the Basha job, I kind of had a short list of guys that I wanted to get on campus, help me build the program, guys that I can trust, guys that are really good football coaches. I was able to bring on the defensive coordinator, who I've known for a long time, from Mountain Point when Mountain Point was in their heyday. And my principal was very supportive, got him a job on campus. Special teams coordinator got him a job on campus. There was a couple guys on campus already, and some of them I kept, some of them I didn't. So I want to say my first year I had about 5 guys. But to answer your question, I remember being at Hamilton, and there was literally 15, 16, 17 coaches within the program on campus. That doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, that's incredible. Definitely.
Yeah.
Coach Brusso, some thoughts on that?
Yeah. You kind of touched on some varsity level positions, but what's your approach to filling out your lower levels, freshman and JV, obviously, and then with those coaches in those positions, describe how you work with them to align to ultimately have the dividends and results success pay off on Fridays.
Yeah. I think the first thing is obviously getting coaches on staff that have an attachment to the community and know people, and then also have a good reputation, right, within the community. There's a lot of youth coaches or a lot of guys, that if you bring on your lower levels, a lot of coaches are just looking to get their kids right, and they might not be a great fit, right? They might not have a really good reputation. They might not, be the most ethical person, right? And so I think it's finding that balance of that coach. At least this is what I did when I took over Basha, who's not only had success at that level, but has a really good reputation throughout in this case, throughout Chandler or Southeast Chandler. And then from there, like anything, man, you got to set expectations. When I sit down with my JV and coach, and when I sit down with my freshman coach, there's an expectation, written out of look, this is what I expect out of you, in terms of fostering the culture that we want, building it, fostering it, making sure that they understand transparency, that they understand that we're very big on being transparent with our kids, right, and making sure that they're setting aside time to have talks with kids and get meaningful talks with kids about maybe playing time or lack of playing time, or just being transparent with that, so that these kids at least can have a dinner table conversation with their parents and speak eloquently of, when they're asked, hey, Johnny, what's going on, and they're able to give feedback, and it should be positive feedback, even if it's not the answer that they're looking for. But like I said, we're really big on that, and then that's why I've been fortunate to have guys that are leaders in whatever profession they are, so they already know how to manage people. So I think that's the big part is you got to have guys that are not only attached to the community, right, but also know how to manage people and have experience doing that. That's tough because as we all know, Cody, like it's managing kids and managing the staff. It's tough to do both, right? You get a different mix of people and agendas and what it is they're looking for, and you just got to make sure that you set expectations. That's the biggest thing, and being proactive with that too, and making sure that everything aligns vertically.
I've said that. I think more often than not, it's most difficult to get all the adults on the same page than it is the kids. Kids are,
100%.
are sponges, and you've already talked about it, kids, once you establish a relationship with them and they know that you believe in them and you want what's best for them, they usually are pretty good about that. Sometimes adults are different.
Yeah,
Sometimes
you
that can
can't
be
make you can't
way
you
more
can't make them do
challenging.
100 up downs.
Yeah, there you go. Uh, we asked Coach Kirsting this last week, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it as well. What do you think are the most important roles on the staff to get established when you take over a new program? Most
Oh,
important coaching hires.
loyalty, right? Loyalty, uh, especially in this day and age. We talk about never putting yourself in a position to put a crack in the foundation. And I'm not talking about loyalty from, somebody not agreeing with the game plan or whatever. I'm talking, parents are always going to try and figure out a way to, get somebody's ear, right. And so we really talk about, hey, whether we agree with it or we don't agree with it, we never side, or we never allow that parent to come in and maybe kind of ruffle some things up by maybe something that you said, like, oh yeah, I think we should have done this instead. That's when those cracks start coming, and you don't want them to turn into fissures, right? And so I think loyalty is very big, right? Obviously accountability, right? When you're in high school ball, like, these guys got to be poignant. They've got to do their job through and through, you know. And so that accountability piece as well, right? And then, one of our quotes that we have in our coach's office is, no ego allowed. So when they walk out the door, we talk about, ego ruins everything, man. Ego ruins staffs, it ruins teams, it ruins all of that, organizations, everything. And the second thing is the goal. The goal is more important than your role. So, like, we're all on this ship together. Whatever our title is, I'm not a big title guy. I try and see through that very quickly. Guys that just want a title, and our goal of what it is we want to experience for the upcoming season is more important than what you think your role should be. What are you doing in your role to make sure that we're meeting our goal, right? So we're very big on that.
I love that, Coach. Your goal is more important than your role, and you can probably hear my dogs barking in the background a little bit too. I know you talked about bringing in a defensive coordinator. Was that the most important role? Offensive line coach, strength coach. What were positions in terms of positions of need? I believe you came up as an offensive guy. Were there
hmm
certain spots that you really wanted to make sure you filled with guys that had a certain expertise in those areas?
Yeah, obviously, I think your four most important coaches. There's my dog. Sorry. Your freshman coach, your head freshman coach, right? Your varsity O-line coach, your varsity defensive coordinator, and then your strength coach, right? Because those, you talked about it. I'm an offensive guy, so I needed to make sure that my defense coordinator was dialed in, right? Like, and he was good at what he does. My strength coach. those guys sometimes are with those kids more than anybody else is, right? And so, in my opinion, my philosophy, a lot of your culture is built within the weight room, right? And so you got to make sure that you have a guy that um, has a great balance between holding kids accountable and being a very disciplined, efficient weight room, but at the same time being a little bit loose and having fun with the kids too, right? To where they don't think they're going into the military every single time they walk into the weight room, right? Boot camp, right? And then obviously, like I said, you gotta have a guy that you can help, that you can trust to manage the lower level program, right? Because as you know, like when you're a varsity coach, you're spending, you know, 85-90% of your time and work doing administration stuff and getting the varsity ready. And so you have to have a guy that down there that you can trust and kind of push him on his way and let him go do his thing.
Coach Brusso, some thoughts on that?
No, I really like everything you explained there, and I think it echoes a lot of what we've heard and talked about in the past. Every coach we've talked with has mentioned the O line coach being crucial, and your strength coach, and the freshman head position as well. So I think just to see that across guests and conversations is an interesting note.
Really, really good guys that know what they're talking about. So I think that freshman coach should be, if you're out there getting a new job, that should be one of the first ones you think about. Next question, Coach. How do you go about putting in your system, both offensively, defensively, and special teams wise?
Um, well, I think the first thing is obviously making sure that your whoever your coordinators are, that we're all on the same page in terms of the philosophy, okay, of what we want to be and what it's going to look like, um, and obviously having competent individuals that can help teach and develop what it is you want to accomplish, right? Um, and so I think from the beginning is when you're interviewing guys, right, making sure that their philosophies align with yours as well when it comes to the game of football, and what you would like to see done in that phase of the game, whatever it might be. Obviously, putting together the looking at personnel, right? Looking at personnel, and then how do we build our structure around our personnel? I'm big on that. I'm not very big on playbook over players. I'm players over playbook guy. Like, I mean, you got to. I think that's the fun in high school is every year you might need to tinker with stuff and change some things up based on what you got, and then from there is formalizing that, finalizing that, and then allowing your guys go and be the captain of that group or of that ship or whatever it is that they're in charge of. I set the expectations up front, and then I let them kind of spread their wings and go. Right, that's what coaches want to do. Um, do I micromanage a little bit? Yeah, of course, but I'm not like, I inspect what I expect, right? I'm always inspecting what I expect. And if I have to have conversations and get people back on the same page, but for the most part, coaches want to coach, right? And if I have to pivot and make a move, I didn't do a good enough job hiring the right guy, right? So from there, it's like anything else, right? You're doing installs with the kids. While you're doing it, you're teaching them how to practice as well. It's not just what are we doing in practice, but how are we practicing? And this is what it looks like. We talk a lot about a standard of performance in everything we do. There's got to be a standard of performance. How we enter the locker room, how we get on the bus, how we get off the bus, how we behave on the sideline, how we behave in the hallways. There's just a standard of performance with everything. And again, that's something that takes over time, but it's something that's got to be done every single day. You can build a culture, right? But if you're not fostering it daily, and it's just like a garden, if you're not picking those weeds daily, you're gonna have weeds pretty quick. So um, it's I know it's a long answer, but getting the right guys on the bus and then allowing them to take over.
Well, let me ask you this, Coach, because this is kind of a fun one. I've talked to Coach Brusso, and I could definitely go back to being an assistant and be fine. The thing that I would have no problem being a position coach for a coordinator on either side of the ball, but I've talked to Coach about this. The one thing that I would have the most trouble giving up is control of the practice plan, because I'm a huge 90-minute to 100-minute practice guy, and I really, really strongly believe in that. That would be something that if I had to go back to being an assistant, I would struggle with. So how do the Basha Bears practice, and what are your core beliefs in practice philosophy?
We want to be as efficient as possible, right? Um, and what I mean by that is we obviously we don't want any dead time. We don't want any stand-alone time. The kids got to understand how we go from transition to transition, right? And what that looks like, and then doing doing things, not being in a rush to do things wrong, right? Yes, we want to have a ton of plays. We want kids to get a ton of reps. We want to develop, but I think sometimes a lot of these guys, it's don't coach during practice. You get a lot of philosophies, and I've had some conversations with some guys that have that philosophy of, we're just going to go as fast as we can for an hour and a half and try and get as many reps as we can, and then coach after practice. I think you have to have a balance with that, right? And not just doing things just to do it, right? And I think a lot of coaches get tied up in that, right? They get tied up in in trying to have a pace that's a crazy fast pace to practice. But then you start, practice is about perfecting it is what you want to do, and so I'm very big on that and making sure that all our drills, all our sessions, they align with what it is we want to execute. Right, our kids know that our practices are going to be extremely physical, and that's what wins football games. Our coaches are very intense out there, and that's an expectation because when we tell the kids, we prep the kids. Look, guys, we're not getting you ready for a ballet competition. Don't take it personal. You're going into battle here. So, I mean, we're not going to be soft on you during practice, right? And I think the big thing too is making sure that our coaches, correct the mistake. Don't get personal with a kid, right? A lot of times coaches will get personal with a kid, and that's never good, right? And we don't want that either. But I'm like you. I have a really hard time not being in charge of the practice plan and making sure, because I want things perfect and to a fault. You know, um, um, I'll be honest with you. I'll be more upset if I have a shitty Monday practice than I did if I lost a game.
That's really
And I'm
interesting
sorry
stuff.
for cussing. Should I have not have
No,
said
you're
that?
all
Sorry,
right.
That's
man.
You're
fine.
all right, Coach. Um,
I get more upset if I have a bad practice than I do.
I completely understand. That's really, really good stuff. Coach, walk me through, if you could, if you can. What's a typical game week? Because obviously your preseason practices, your spring practices, and things are going to look different than a typical game week. But what does a typical game week look like for you guys?
So Monday is Monday is a little bit more of a slower day, if you will. We kind of ramp up. Um, so Monday's kind of a slower day where we're kind of going over basically the base plan of what we're going to see, from a defensive standpoint. They're going to be looking at top formations, top base plays, run plays, pass plays, motions, shifts, a lot of communication, big communication practice, right? And we do that in order for, as we lead up to the game, our kids can now play fast and already know the rules and what it is they're supposed to do to execute their job. And the same thing with offense. What are we going to see base structure wise? What are going to be our top formations, our top plays that we're going to run out of these formations? Same type of thing, and maybe kind of running a dry run through all that stuff. Obviously, big piece of fundamentals, half of the practice, right? Getting back, game of football is still about blocking and tackling at the end of the day, and making sure we're always fine tuning those skills. And then as we get into Tuesday, that's more we're really ramping it up, right? We're trying to play fast. We've kind of got, hopefully we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's already, and a little bit more group sessions, obviously in the Tuesday and Wednesday practices, situational type periods, um, uh, things of that nature. We don't do walkthroughs. I'm not a big walkthrough guy because kids start messing around. The second you tell them their helmets only. They think it's no different than the kid that walks in the classroom and sees a sub. He thinks it's what? It's screw around time, right? So we never do that. I'm not saying our Thursday practices are extremely physical, but we don't walk through anything. We run through things, and so it's more of a game simulation on our Thursday, where we're literally running through an entire game, including special teams, getting kids on and off the field, making sure that all our units are fully prepared with where they are in the game, then you play on Friday, and I'm a big Saturday guy, putting closure on what you did Friday. I know some coaches they like to give the weekend off to kids. I don't. I want Monday to be okay. We're fresh and we're starting over, right, on a new opponent, new challenge, new plan, and putting closure on that Saturday and flushing the toilet on that game.
Interesting stuff, Coach. Really, really appreciate that. Coach Brusso?
Yeah, this was something you've kind of mentioned throughout as we've gone on, but you've talked so much about almost like front loading within your process, and doing a lot of pre-work to get to the point where on Friday night the system's kind of running itself and everything's set up and prepped for where it needs to be. So who are the people
Yes.
that kind of informed you and taught you that, or what were the experiences that maybe gave you that kind of insight?
I just think it's something. When I was part of Hamilton, it was a very process oriented philosophy, and I just kind of took it with me. I mean, I never worry about the outcome of the game, right? We don't talk about the outcome. We don't talk about the scoreboard. We don't talk about any of that stuff. We talk about winning Monday, right? And having the best Monday practice that we can have, right? And then we talk about winning Tuesday and having the best Tuesday practice we have. And our kids, they can recite it to you now. We don't even worry about what's going to happen Friday. We worry about the process, and the process takes care of the outcome almost every single time, right? And so that's something that I picked up in my early years. I was very blessed to be part of a really good program and learn a lot from some really good coaches. And then as I became a head coach, kind of learned some things, through trials and errors as well. And so that's that's just kind of how we do things.
Thank you for that, Coach. You've touched on it a little bit, but could you give me a general overview of your strength conditioning philosophy and who does your strength conditioning?
So I've got a really good strength coach. He was a college guy. He was at Western New Mexico. He was at University of Hawaii. He was actually already there. Um, he was one of the coaches that I retained. He was brought in by our principal or our AD at the time, who is now our principal, Marcus Reichel, who was offensive coordinator at Basha under Buskin. Before that, he was an offensive coordinator in a Division II program. And our strength coach was a player for him and then a GA for him. So, it's very, I would like to think that it's very similar to, we want our kids to be college ready. So we try to make everything similar to what they'll see, if they have the opportunity to go on and play at the next level. So we're not wasting any time. It's extremely organized. Um, it's extremely engaging, if you will. We run an extremely tight ship. Everything's based on. I'm an old school guy in the sense that everything's based off of bench, squat, and clean, right? And our core lifts are those, and then our supplemental lifts are there to help with those, and a bigger, faster, stronger model, if you will, right? And just taking advantage of every minute that we have. And our kids know they've got to wear certain uniforms in there every single day. They buy into that. They understand that, that's where you're going to build a lot of your toughness, your mental toughness, your leadership. Being able to check a teammate if they're not putting in the work that they need to put in, and we want it to be a point where it's a player-led weight room experience, right? And yeah, myself and our strength coach have got to get on kids at times, right? But for the most part, we want them to start policing themselves. So that's what you would see if you walked into our weight room.
Great stuff, Coach. Let me ask you this, because I always think this is interesting. I know it took us a while, but we are very fortunate. Our administration has been awesome. We have a freshman football class where we get all those guys in, and then we have our other guys in the last hour of the day. How do you guys go about that at Basha High School?
Same thing as you. So our JV is first hour, our freshman second hour, and our varsity sixth hour. And I'm with them. I'm with them obviously all three periods, which is really important to me because I want to be able to have a relationship with every kid in our program from freshman all the way up. Same with our strength coach. And you know, the only difference really in our programs from varsity and to freshmen is we don't allow our freshmen to back squat until their second semester of high school. Everything they do is front squatting because we need them to build their core. They need to show us that they're not going to get caved in when they put a bar on their back, you know. And so really, that's about the only difference in terms of what we change up in our daily program with them.
I love that. That's a great point there for everybody because that if you've ever tried to teach a beginning freshman to back squat, it can be very challenging. And really, is
Absolutely.
there any need for it? Is the front squats probably getting everything you need to there in that regard? So interesting stuff there, Coach Brusso.
Sorry, I don't have a dog, but my child is crying. Um, when you're working with those different levels, whether it's at practice or obviously in the day, how do you set and orient your goals towards something that's realistic and manageable for them, but obviously pushing them towards those standards of excellence that you have?
In what way? Towards what? Goals in what capacity? You talking on the field? You talking in the weight room? Or you just talking overall?
Well, I think you obviously you'd split it based on the context, so you can go on and talk about the weight room or the field, because generally they're going to be different, but they should all work together in some fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really blessed. We have kids now that want to be part of the program that um, have the goal of going on and playing at the next level, right? Like and once you get a bunch of kids that um, are they're already internally motivated, right? Um, it's a lot easier to manage that day to day, and so you know, one of the things that we do is we have the kids make the goals first, and all we do is then hold them accountable for it. So they're going to have ownership in what it is they're trying to achieve, right, as a team or as an individual, right. And typically, when you give kids that opportunity to tell you what it is they want to accomplish, it's going to be the same thing that you as a coach would say to them that you want them to accomplish, right? Like they're going to tell you what you want to hear, right? And then and then once they get ownership in that, it makes it much more easier then to hold a kid accountable to achieving his goals, right? Because it's like, look, this was your goal. This wasn't mine. This was your goal, right? I'm just helping you. I'm just going to help you reach it, right? I'm just holding you accountable to what it is you want to accomplish. And I think the big thing too is like, coach, it takes time, like getting everybody on the same page so that they're hearing the same message wherever they go, whether it be a different teammate, whether it be a different coach in the program. The message is always kind of the same, right? And the standard is the standard, and it takes what it takes. I mean, these are two of the things that we talk about this year, especially after our loss to Liberty in the state championship. You know, our big thing is it takes what it takes, right? It takes what it takes. We call it wit, right? I mean, you know, and so the kids continually hearing that, um, you know, you know, the day to day process then becomes easier to manage.
Okay, Coach, moving on. Thank you for all that. Really enjoyed that. It takes what it takes. Definitely really good stuff. I love the input about front squat to back squat and learned a ton of stuff here. Moving on to the next question. When you take over a program, how do you go about assessing your players' abilities and assessing the strength of your opponents? I think the last week we talked a little bit about Coach Kirsting. One of the things he always has talked about is you design your system and your player strength into what it takes to beat the best teams on your schedule, which I thought was really interesting. And if it's good enough to beat them, it should be good enough to beat everybody else. But how do you go about assessing your players' abilities when you're taking over a new program?
Well, I think that comes back from film study from the previous year, right? Looking at who your returners are and breaking them down as though you're breaking down an opponent, right? And looking at what their strengths and weaknesses are. And then Coach Kirstein is right. It's designing something within your framework that fits your personnel that you have, right? And obviously putting from an offensive standpoint, you know, obviously putting your kids in the best position to have success. And we talk about this year, like our goal is to catch Liberty, right? That's what our target is Liberty's back right now, right? And we feel if we can do that, we can take care of everybody else, right? So that's what our focus is obviously on us, but how do we close the gap to Liberty, right? They beat us 35-17. How do we close that gap, right? And we feel if we can close that gap with a great program like that, Coach Thomas does a fantastic job. We should be able to have success against the other opponents on our schedule as well.
Coach Brusso?
Yeah, no, I like that you're kind of layering in obviously coming up short in the Open Championship game, kind of layering in that personal, just extra little additional motivation there for the kids. Being in such, a strong region that you guys are in, that goal I would assume changes year to year. Instead of chasing Liberty, Chandler, Hamilton, whatnot. How do you guys go? I mean, obviously you talked about a little bit earlier about separating yourself from those teams in your region, but how do you guys go about carving out, your identity in that area, and then making sure that you close that gap and then expand it once you get in the lead?
Yeah, so our big thing in our program is that I feel that our program we've created a platform for kids to go and reach their goals, and what I mean by that is we're an A+ school, right? So from an educational standpoint, the student athlete's going to get a fantastic education. It's going to prepare him for college, right? We've got a ex-college coach that's our strength and conditioning coach, right? So they're also going to get developed in the weight room. If they go on, if they have that opportunity to go on and reach their goal and play at the next level, they're already going to be adjusted to it, right? We talk about the football piece, the development there, right? I have my own coach on staff that doesn't even coach football. He is solely our character and leadership coach.
Our next question, so that's awesome.
He comes once a week. Well, he's always around us anyway, but 1 hour every week, even in the off season, the entire year. He's got a leadership and character plan that he puts our kids through. And I think that's a really important piece too, right? I think we've had a lot of kids that have gone on that have been high profile kids. We don't really deal with a ton of selfishness. We don't really deal with a ton of, I want my own, I want to get mine. You hear those types of things, right? We don't deal with a lot of that. And I really believe it's because these kids are hearing weekly, at least at the very least weekly, but also maybe daily from us too, about the importance of making sure that everybody eats on the team and really building that team camaraderie, right? So that you have that piece too. And then I make a lot of my kids run track. Like so we have a great sprints coach, one of the top in Arizona, I think, and it's free speed training, right? And so we get our kids out there, competing out there, and running in their underwear and trying to get faster for football, right? And so I think, if you buy into our platform, that's what we talk about. If you buy into our platform, you're going to achieve your goals.
Coach, I love that, which leads me into my next question, which you kind of answered. Let me ask you, this gentleman you have come in to do an hour a week, is he on the staff at Basha? Is he a teacher?
Yeah.
Or how do you go about doing that? And how does
No,
that fit into your
Tim
week?
Maddox,
is that after school, or is that in the course of the class?
In the course of the class. So Tim Maddox is our leadership and character coach. He's been with me for probably 4 years now. He's associate pastor at a church, Bethel, at a local church here in Chandler. And I approached him. So he had come. I had met him through, I can't remember who it was, but somebody we mutually knew. And it was back to that. I knew it was such an important piece to build culture, right? Is to have that. And Cody, as you know, man, as a head coach, you're spread so thin on everything, man. And you don't want to, if you can delegate certain, if you look at your program like a pie, and you're cutting out the pieces that are really, really, really important. If you can find the right guys and delegate it to where they own that piece, right? and I think that's where we're at now is that that's what he does. So we have our 6th hour, as I talked about. We have our 6th hour class, which is our weights class. Every Thursday though is a block period, right? So we don't see him Wednesday, but then we get him 2 hours on a Thursday. So the first from 12:15 to 1:15, they're going to be in our team room doing leadership and character training, right? And it's something that he has designed. It's something that he does. He speaks for the Cardinals. He speaks with the Sun Devils. He goes there. Yes, he is a paid coach on our staff. Our principal uses his stipend to pay for him, fall stipend and a spring stipend, so that he's there year round. Um, and he's just done a tremendous job, man. And I've been able to just hand it over to him, right, to where, right, the details aren't getting glossed over. If I'm, working on some administration piece or whatever it is I'm trying to do, right, that's his baby. That's what he loves to do. It gives our kids another resource, another mentor of somebody that they can lean on and reach out to when life gets tough. And they know that he's not out there. He's out at every single practice, but he's there to observe. He's there to observe how our kids are operating, how our kids are our attitude, and how our kids are acting with each other. And he'll address that piece of it, right? And it's just been great. And I think it's extremely important. I think it's kind of what separates us maybe a little bit from other schools is the kids are getting that important piece. And I think it limits, again, when you're being proactive with that stuff, you're not being as reactive, right? Kind of dealing with less issues throughout the day or throughout the year, right? Because these kids are constantly hearing this feedback.
And I love that it's not coming from you, because as you know, sometimes they got to hear the message from different people. Because if you hear it from the same
Absolutely.
voice every time, it becomes
Yep.
really, really easy to tune everything out. So that is a fantastic piece, and what a great job by your school district to value that and understand the importance of that, because that's
And the
really
thing is
fantastic
like
stuff.
it's grown. So like once some of our other sports programs saw us having success with that, so like baseball then hires him too. So he'll come and talk to baseball sometimes. Basketball, he gets involved with the basketball team now too. And when you start getting your athletes on campus from all different sports hearing that same message, then it bleeds out into the school, right? And I think that's why I think Basha has a really strong school culture. And I think one of the reasons is because of that work and those athletes going on and being leaders in the campus. Chandler Unified, every Basha High School, and we're surrounded. Cody, I don't know if when the last time you've been out here, but to the south is Indian Reservation, to the north is Perry, to the east is Castile, to the west is Hamilton, to the northwest is Chandler. So we're surrounded. Like if you needed to go to Basha, you're passing somebody, right? If you don't live in the boundary and you want to go to Basha, you're passing another school. We are the only high school in the district, and we're landlocked, that has a growing enrollment in high school. And I firmly believe it's from our school culture.
I love that, Coach. That's fascinating stuff. Coach Brusso, some thoughts on that?
Well, I think that was extremely remarkable, and I think the biggest testament to that, when you're talking about, one of the biggest carrots for your guys is going to the next level and getting college opportunities. And my brief stint in 6A, that's such a big thing for the kids, and that's kind of the highest currency that I saw and ran into for them. But so often you can run into jealousy and resentment and
Absolutely.
stuff like that. So the fact that you guys are proactive against that and have largely nipped that in the butt, I think that speaks to the process and program that you guys have, because that kind of evil and cancer can creep in real easy, especially with 16, 17-year-olds, and all they do is spend most of their time online and whatnot and seeing this or that. So, kudos to you
Yeah.
guys.
I appreciate it. It's tough, man. These kids, I've had to have tough conversations with kids and tell them to get off social media, right? Because I tell them, comparison is the thief of joy, right? And they get online a lot and they see their buddy over here they think they're better than, but he's at this other school and he just got offered by whoever. And, then it puts them down in the dumps and they start getting negative thoughts. And, we continually have to address it. You got to do it every day, right? But if you do it every single day, you're proactive about it, like I said, I mean, you're dealing with less issues.
I love it.
Coach, I love it. Really, thank you so much for joining us. I got one last one here. How do you go about grading your process? How do you evaluate your program?
I think you evaluate your program in different ways. I think are you talking like at the end of the year? Or are you just talking like in general?
I'm talking about you kind of took over the program, you've implemented your system, and obviously it's not going to be perfect after you've done it for a year, but how do you go about grading what's going on at this point and then assessing improvements that need to be made and things of that nature?
So I do a self-reflection sheet of myself, first and foremost. And you can't lie to yourself, right, Cody? Like you can't lie to yourself. So you got to be truthful in what it is you feel you need to get better at first, right? Because it's not about anybody else getting better or whatnot. You got to work on yourself first, right? And you've always got to learn, right? And so I think that one of the things that I do is I really enjoy going and visiting a high school that's of high caliber. Um, uh, for instance, I've become really good friends with the Corona Centennial coach, and if you know anything about California football, Centennial is the only public school in the state of California that makes the Open every year and plays the Modern Days, and they're a public school. They're an Inland Empire. So what is it that guy's doing, right? And going there, and 4 years ago I shadowed him for. I've been out there probably 3 times. I come back humbled every time because I think he's one of the better football coaches probably in the country at any level. And then obviously taking ideas from other people, and then getting feedback from your staff, getting feedback from your seniors, what it is you would like to see different. If you were a freshman, what with our program could I do better for you, right? Getting player feedback, getting staff feedback, getting admin feedback, getting feedback from teachers. What are our kids' behavior like? And really just hitting all cylinders, I think, and just evaluating it from that. And then you got to be looking for constant improvement, right? I mean, I just think that's, I think for a lot of times, if us coaches, what you need to get better at, right? You know what you need to get better at, and going out and attacking it, and finding out how to get better at that, and but again, I think it's all about getting feedback from everybody that's got some sort of ownership in the program.
Well, Coach, I can't thank you enough for joining us, and everybody watching out there, if you could do us a favor and like and subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to grow this as much as possible, and I know Basha Bear Nation will hopefully listen to this and enjoy some of the future guests we'll have on. Coach, I'll definitely be calling you again to have you on the show. Really, really enjoyed it. It was a tremendous hour of learning, and really thankful, and look forward to talking to you soon. And we'll get to talk some more ball. We got a lot of subjects lined up and different stuff, but I learned a ton. So first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us. And Coach Brusso, I'm going to give you the final word tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Coach. Again, it's been an honor listening and chatting with you and just getting your expertise and insight. We greatly appreciate it. So we'll have you on again soon.
Guys, thank you for having me on. Like I said, extremely honored. Cody, thank you for setting this up and having me on, and you're doing a heck of a job too up there. And I don't know, hopefully I can make that drive up there when it gets a little warmer and kind of pick your brain a little bit.
Thank you. All right. So again, please like and subscribe. All our hopefully new Basha Bear fans, get on here and watch Coach McDonald. And thank you again, and have a good week, everybody.